because my next guest just testified before a federal grand jury. He says he was in possession of a trove of digital evidence from Diddy's freak-offs and parties.
Combs' legal team vehemently denied the accusations on his behalf, while the rapper continues to be held in a Brooklyn jail since September, awaiting his mate.
The story of Shah Diddy Combs and his mother Janice is one that dives deep into the complexities of family bonds, legacy, and the shadow of an unconventional upbringing. Putrescently whispers of Janice's alleged involvement in her son's tumultuous life have taken over the gossip. Mill rumor shifts world that the FBI might have taken Janice into custody, alleging she played a role in orchestrating or enabling some of the very behaviors that have landed Diddy at the center of scandal. The question on everyone's lips: how much did Janice know, and could she have influenced her choices? The layers of this story are captivating, messy, and frankly,
certainly there's a lot of information that needs to be substantiated, investigated, and those kinds of things. But when we look at people who become offenders, we oftentimes see early exposure to whether that's or actual behavior, and we oftentimes see that within the family.
To understand how we gather, we need to rewind to the days when Shah Holmes was just a boy growing up in Mount Vernon, New York, under the roof of a single mother who was determined to provide him with everything the world had to offer. Gia, former model and teacher's assistant, was a woman who refused to let tragedy define her life after losing her husband Melvin in the early 1970s. She took the reins and did what shielded him from the darker truths of their reality.
You know, that kind of environment growing up in is going to have an impact on a child growing up. Now, it doesn't make excuses for what people do in adulthood, and the form that can take really depends on a lot of different things, including things such as what are the family values? Are the family values about, being open and honest about things, or if there's trauma in a family, do families deal with it, or how is that child raised?
And a recent documentary, Sean's childhood home wasn't the picture-perfect suburban haven it might have appeared to be on the surface. Janice reportedly had a penchant for hosting grand lively gatherings at their house. These weren't your typical family get-togethers. Guests would come from all walks of life. Some from Harlem's streets, others from the world of glamour and excess. And while young, Shah's often tucked away in another part of the house. It said that the energy and antics of these gatherings left an indelible.
I think another question that we just can't ignore is the fact as a role of power. Because one question is, how does somebody become the way they are? And then another question is, how are they allowed to stay the way that they are? And I think that also speaks to this kind of, lack of accountability.
Tim Patterson, a childhood friend of Shah's, shared some eyebrow-raising anecdotes in the Peacock documentary Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy Patterson, described the parties at Janice's home as anything but ordinary, here called a constant swirl of activity, with people lounging in various states of undress, loud music blaring, and the air thick with a sense of reckless indulgence for young Sean and his friends. This was simply normal. As Patterson put it, that was just Saturday night. But looking back, he now believes these experiences may have desensitized them to certain behaviors and blurred the lines of what was acceptable.
Still pretty early in the proceedings. I think it's only been about a month or a month and a half since he's been arraigned and held in detention. And so the investigations are always going to be a continuous and ongoing process. I'm sure at this point there's been an exchange of discovery. And not only that, but I think there's been a gag order placed on the attorneys with information that they can and cannot share. But
this environment may hold the key to understanding Diddy later years. For example, the infamous freak-off, as they've been described in court documents and testimonies, allegedly mirrored the atmosphere of those early house parties. The parallels are hard to ignore: the same sense of anything goes excess, the same cast of colorful characters, and the same blurred boundaries. While Janice has vehemently denied any wrongdoing or influence on her son's adult life, the comparisons between Diddy's notorious gatherings and the parties of his youth are enough to raise eyebrows. Monitoring
another push to free Sean Diddy Combs tonight, with his legal team citing new evidence in an updated bail proposal. The music mogul agreeing to around-the-clock security and cutting out contact with basically anyone but his legal team to get out of jail ahead of his trial scheduled for May of next year for charges he allegedly coerced and abused women for years.
One of the more striking revelations from Patterson's account was the sheer variety of people who passed through the Combs household during those parties. complexities he described, how Sean grew up surrounded by individuals from all walks of life, some from the world of glamour, others from more dangerous circles. Patterson even hinted at moments when they'd stumble into private rooms and see things that Nold should have been exposed to it. It paints a picture of a young boy who was exposed to an adult world far too soon, a world where boundaries didn't seem to exist. Patterson now wonders whether this early exposure to unrestrained indulgences set the stage for Diddy's own controversial lifestyle later on. It's worth not that Janice has always been fiercely protective of her. Soon after all, she worked tirelessly to put him through private school and even moved the family to a safer neighborhood to give him the best shot at success. But even with her best intentions, it's clear that the duality of Sean's life, the polished exterior of a private school education, and the chaotic energy of those weekends at home created a complex foundation for the man he would become.
Then if he does this new, quote, robust bail package, you can avoid and evade. And he is very connected with people that can help him avoid and evade. I'm not saying he will, but I would be surprised if the court grants him a bond. When the federal government wants you detained, you are normally detained. And here it was a very far-reaching situation that he was involved.
Sean has spoken openly in past interviews about how his mother's sacrifices inspired him. He often credits Janice with teaching him the value of hard work and resilience. However, he has also shared glimpses of his early experiences that suggest a more complicated reality. In one interview, he recounted how he began seeking attention from women as early as 4 or 5 years old, attributing this to moments when his mother's friends would cradle him on their laps in his videos, schedule how much time do include in a self-care break when you're doing everything on your weekly schedule. While he framed these memories as in Awakenings, critics argue that they reflect how early exposure to adult behaviors may have shaped his perceptions.